Hi, welcome to Brain Sense. Today's episode, we are discussing sleep disorders, what happens in the brain when we're sleeping, how we can also just enhance our sleep so that we are able to have better quality sleep and function properly. Why do we need a good night's sleep? We need a good night's sleep to function for cognitive functioning and behavioral functioning, emotional functioning. So when I say cognitive functioning, I'm talking about things like memory, particularly declarative memory. When we say declarative memory, I'm talking about our ability to recall events, recall facts, as in learning. When you're studying and learning for a test, you have to have a very good night's sleep to be able to recall those facts. But also, with regards to emotional functioning, anxiety and depression are all those issues that are linked to poor quality sleep because you haven't allowed your brain to clear out some memories from the previous night. So you're just building up a whole lot of information into your brain without giving it the opportunity to to clear itself out and recuperate and repair itself. When does this happen though? This happens during our what we call rapid eye movement sleep. That's between 9 o'clock and midnight, and others say 9 o'clock and 2 a.m. in the morning. Um, that's so it's imperative for you to be properly and completely asleep during that time to allow your brain to repair itself. So, what are the sleeping disorders? Well, the most common one is insomnia. Insomnia is where we have difficulty falling asleep. I think that's the one that most people can relate to. But with insomnia, there's often underlying issues that make us struggle to fall asleep. For example, stress. Um, New moms will know this, that we stress or just in our daily lives with these a build-up of responsibilities and stress that we encounter on a daily basis from our jobs, from our families, and all our responsibility. And that would often cause insomnia or inability to fall asleep at night because you're thinking too much and your brain is awake. The other sleeping disorder is narcolepsy. Another one we'll be discussing today. Narcolepsy is where your body struggles to determine when you should fall asleep and when you should wake up. Therefore, your circadian rhythm or sleep awake cycle would be disturbed or disrupted to a certain degree. And now you find yourself, for example, you're falling asleep at 10 o'clock and you're waking up at 2 a.m. for absolutely no reason, and you can't go back to sleep. Those are the issues we'll address today. Um, and other sleeping disorders are sleep apnea, where we have, while you're sleeping, your breathing would pause, your breathing would be disturbed or would pause or stop for a few seconds. Your loved ones would probably know, husband and wives would be able to tell you, you stop breathing at some point. That's something that you actually need to seek medical attention for. Um, or restless leg syndrome, where you'd be asleep but your leg would be moving. That's often caused by too much dopamine, where your brain secretes too much dopamine. But we will talk about that later. But all the hormones and neurotransmitters that are present in your brain, and what actually happens when you're asleep, and how we can minimize or control the secretion of those neurotransmitters. Later in this episode, we will find that out. Another Another common one or well-known sleeping disorder is sleepwalking, where people just wake up out of their beds and they start walking, and often they're so unaware that they are awake because they're not awake. Their brain is asleep, but their body functions or physiologically they are able to make movement, and their brain's unable to control their movement because there should be no movement while you are asleep. There are four um, hormones or neurotransmitters in your brain that are essential for a good night's sleep. One of them is melatonin, the other serotonin, dopamine, as well as norepinephrine. Melatonin is the key of those neurotransmitters. Melatonin is secreted in the pineal gland in the midbrain. But that happens during the night or when it gets darker. All right. So how do we make sure that we have sufficient levels of melatonin in our bodies? Well, melatonin is partly created by serotonin. So the high levels of serotonin you have in your system, the higher the levels of melatonin you would have at night. but they interact with one another. um, Serotonin is stimulated during the day. It's stimulated by light and sunshine, and this is why we're outside today. So I can demonstrate to you the importance of being out in the sun and the effects of the sun on your body and how that relates to your ability to fall asleep or not fall asleep at night. So serotonin is stimulated by light. It's a feel-good hormone, as people would normally say, but it's that neurotransmitter that's present when we are happy, right? And when we're not happy, it manifests in conditions such as depression, for example, and I'm sure you've heard of that. So when you're walking outside in broad daylight, in sunshine, and exercising, walking your dog, or whatever it is that you're doing outside, the light is transported through the optic nerve in your eye into the brain and sends signals for the brain to create more serotonin, which is that feel good, happy hormone neurotransmitter. But serotonin also, in turn, ensures that once the daylight has ended, that there will be sufficient production of melatonin in the brain. But how does that work? So melatonin is stimulated by darkness, whereas serotonin is stimulated by light. But the more light you have during the day, the more melatonin you would have when the darkness sets at night. And melatonin is created in the pineal gland in the midbrain. And melatonin is basically inhibited by light. So during the day, there's no production of melatonin. But at night, once darkness starts, melatonin levels start to increase in your brain, allowing you to fall asleep and stay asleep, but also regulate your circadian rhythm and your body clock or your wake sleep cycle. So your body knows when to wake up and when to go to sleep at night. But there are other neurotransmitters that are involved with sleep, dopamine, for example. So it's important to not wake up or physically move if your sleep is disturbed, because if you do, then you stimulate dopamine in your brain, and dopamine, as we know, is involved also in the frontal part of your brain, the frontal lobes, which are synonymous with high order functioning, that is thinking, decision making, planning in particular. So you see those nights where you wake up during the course of the night and you're sitting up and you have all these fantastic ideas and it is 3 a.m. That is because your dopamine is your brain is secreting dopamine, or your dopamine is activated, or your dopamine levels are higher than they should be, and then your brain can't shut down because it's thinking, what am I going to wake up and do? I've got this and that to do tomorrow, and how am I going to achieve it? Your higher order functioning is now optimized, and that's not good for sleep. So one of those things is to not initiate any movement, and the one way we can do that is by limiting um, fluid intake before bed. So you don't wake up and have to go to the bathroom. You don't have to wake up and go and eat anything, because if you do that, then you have your brain is awake. You've engaged your brain, and your brain is awake and it's working, and it will not be able to shut down and allow you to go to sleep. Another very important neurotransmitter that's involved in sleep is called norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is responsible for regulating stress levels, um, heart rate, or blood pressure, um, as well as arousal, alertness, ability to pay attention and focus. So as you can imagine, if you are alert and feeling highly aroused, or your body functions are highly aroused, you won't be able to sleep. So high levels of norepinephrine in your system will be one of those hindrances that cause you to not be able to sleep. Or when you wake up, find yourself wake up in the middle of the night, where you'd be planning and functioning at high levels, also with your heart rate and feeling awake because your norepinephrine levels are too high. Another very important tip is to go to bed and try and minimize food intake before bed. So not only water intake or liquid intake, but food intake. Um, for example, try to eat a few hours before you go to bed. Leave maybe 2 hours for the body for the food to digest and empty out of your system, because the reason people say go to bed on an empty stomach is because your stomach secretes a hormone called tryptophan, which helps with the production of serotonin and the production of melatonin, as I've described before, how important those two neurotransmitters are in the brain. So your gut is connected to your ability to fall asleep as well. So tryptophan though is not created in the brain; it's created in your stomach. So you often hear people say, um, go to sleep on an empty stomach or don't fall asleep with a full tummy. What they mean by that is because when your tummy is empty, or you've allowed food to be digested enough, your gut creates a hormone called tryptophan, and tryptophan is responsible for the manufacture of serotonin and melatonin. And as I've explained, melatonin and serotonin are very important neurotransmitters when we're trying to fall asleep. So that old saying, sleep on an empty tummy, is actually very good for you. It is very true in a sense that it will help you fall asleep better. So maybe allow 2 hours before you go to bed, have your dinner 2 hours ahead, and then give your body some time to digest the food so that it's able to create sufficient tryptophan to ensure that you have sufficient um, melatonin at night, or serotonin during the day, so that serotonin can help in the manufacture of melatonin. Um, yeah, so I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, like and subscribe so you don't miss another episode in the future and you can be notified.